Hey guys, welcome to this episode of The Deep End with Pastor Steve Ryan and Kyle Headley.
Yeah.
We have a fun podcast planned for you guys today. A lot of you guys don't know, but there's a member of our church, and she's an avid podcast listener and probably our number one supporter, Charity. And so we talk about her a lot. You guys can hear us talk about her or her husband, Brandon, or her kids, Devon, and wow, I just forgot.
Joseph, Brandon, the whole family.
The whole family. I can't believe I did that. Joseph's gonna kick me in my knees. We talk about them all the time, and they're such a valuable part of our congregation and a part of our school. So we actually just wanted to do a podcast called For Charity.
Charity.
What we want to do is just kind of speak into their life and give them a little bit of some confidence, some guidance, and just some love, and let them know that we see all the things that they're doing, and we really appreciate them.
100%. You know, actually, I was looking up a story. You've probably heard this story before. It's about Cornelius and his household. It's in the book of Acts, and it reminded me of Brandon and Charity, Devon and Joseph, because they're all very giving people, giving of their time, their resources, things like that. I have a feeling they've probably always been like that. It's just that now we get to see it firsthand at DP School and the church. But this is what it says in the story. It says, in Caesarea there lived a Roman army officer named Cornelius, who was a captain of the Italian regiment. He was a devout, God-fearing man, as was everyone in his household. He gave generously to the poor and prayed regularly to God. One afternoon about 3 o'clock, he had a vision in which he saw an angel of God coming toward him. Cornelius, the angel said. Cornelius stared at him in terror. He goes, "What is it, sir?" He asked the angel, and the angel replied, and this reminded me of Charity in him. He goes, "Your prayers and gifts to the poor have been received by God as an offering." And God ends up blessing his household, and I think his household gets saved. But it reminded me of Charity, or anybody, when you really start to do things on behalf of God, how God sees it. In fact, one translation says it was like a sweet aroma to God. Mm-hmm. When we give, like when Charity and her family gives of their time or their finances with the right heart, it's like an aroma to God, and he recognizes it and responds. That's crazy.
So good.
I know, it's crazy, man.
That's so good. I mean, and that's honestly, it's not what giving is all about. But it encourages you to be a giver and keep giving when you can't stop receiving. You know, like me and you had this funny exchange sometime last year where
I was just thinking about this, but go ahead.
Me too, where I don't know, where it's like I gave you $5 and then a couple days later you gave me 20, and then I gave you something and then you gave me a gift card for shoes, and
it kept going back.
It kept going back and forth, and then finally I landed on a guy at CVS who I saw his shoes, and they were kind of falling apart, and he was stocking the aisles, and I just walked up to him and I gave him the gift card that you had given me, and he started crying because he really needed new shoes, but he was living paycheck to paycheck.
That's crazy.
And that exchange for him would have never happened if me and you didn't have that little back and forth thing. And I think we started off joking with each other, where I think I had like a penny or I had a dime in my pocket, and I was just like, "Here, Pastor, I'm giving this to you." And so that's the crazy thing about giving, man, is like you can't outgive God. And you know, I'm gearing up to do tithes and offering this week when Rex Crane comes to town, right. and it can be hard when you've done tithes and offerings so many times in the church. You kind of are like, man, what do I just keep saying the same old thing? And but the truth of the matter is, as hard as you want to try, and as you cannot outgive God. And I think Charity and Brandon are people who really try to test that theory for the good, though. You know what I mean? They're not like arrogant and like, we're going to see if we can outgive God.
Yeah.
But I think God truly blesses them because they are such giving and loving people. I mean, they give of their time, their resources, their everything.
Well, it reminds me of Rick Warren that wrote The Purpose-Driven Life, was pastor of Saddleback Church. I think he's given it over to someone else now. But he gives away 90% of his income, which is incredible. Joel Osteen is another one that I don't believe has taken a salary in decades.
Yeah, he takes no salary. He's an avid tither and giver, and all his income is off of book sales and
exactly.
Because he does like a public speaking, like for athletes and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so you look at somebody and you go, man, God will continue to bring in things. And I think people like Charity and Brandon and different people like that, I think they're so blessed, you can't contain it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that abundant life, which if you go into John 10:10, where it says the enemy comes to kill, steal, and destroy, but God's come to give you life and life more abundantly. That word abundantly, I've been told before, in the Greek, is like taking a cup that never stops running over.
Right.
And that's the way giving is. You give, even if you're not a Christian, if you treat people good and sow good, or you sow by giving, you're going to reap that.
Oh, well, I mean, look at Joe Rogan for an example. Like, he started a whole comedy club scene in Texas, that there was a dead comedy club scene, just to give up-and-coming artists and veteran artists a place where they can hone their craft and practice their craft. And his whole thing was like, I just don't want to lose money. And he has like 20 employees. He employs comics. Wow. So like, one of the things is like, you know, if you're going to work at the bar or work or be a waiter or something like that, you have to have stand-up sets. So what he's doing is getting these guys who are working to become comedians a full-time job that can pay their bills, while allowing them to take the time to work on their craft. So you can't just be someone that wants to go in there and be like, I want to be a waiter and work there.
Yeah.
You have to be a comic.
It's almost like your job.
Yeah.
Because you want to be a pastor, preacher, things like that. So you're getting paid to be able to do things you love, but the ultimate goal is
eventually God is going to put me in that position. And I'm not trying to leave DP City. I want to pastor underneath you and Pastor Suzanne and Pastor Bob and Susan. But, you know, when people are giving like that, it just blesses them abundantly. You know, like I said, Joe Rogan, did you see the truck he just got?
Mm-mm.
He got a one-off custom Ford Raptor, brand new, so that's coming from Ford. And then there's a shop called Hennessy, not to be confused with
the alcohol. Yeah, I've heard of
which
Hennessy,
is like a performance shop, and they completely just customized the truck for him. It has 1,000 horsepower to the wheels, which means it has more than 1,000 horsepower, because when it says to the wheels, that means how much actually goes from the wheels to the concrete. 1,000 horsepower.
So when you're just saying it, I would imagine that Hennessy wanted to do this for Joe Rogan simply because he's Joe Rogan.
Yeah, I think you get a little bit of clout. And Hennessy is a very popular. I mean, Joe Rogan has a couple cars from them.
Yeah.
But you get a little bit of clout when you're an auto shop and you've built something for an avid car collector like Joe Rogan. Like Joe Rogan has like I wouldn't say it's like a parking garage. It's definitely not on the level of Jay Leno, but he has like probably like 20 cars that he collects.
And if he promotes your car, what's that do for that car company?
Joe Rogan just drops Hennessy one time on his podcast. You know, it's over. If you're somebody who can afford that, I mean, you have to be a high roller.
So when you talk about giving again, there's two people I thought in the social media realm. Mr. Beast, what's he do all the time?
Just gives.
I mean, unbelievable. Probably in his mid to late 20s now. Then the other one is that Aiden Ross, who I'd never heard of, that did the interview with Trump, showed up with a Cybertruck with it wrapped with what happened to Trump recently with being shot.
Oh, that's crazy.
It was unbelievable. And he had this whole interview with Trump. Had never met him. Trump was inspired to meet with him because of his son, Barron Trump. Said to him, he's like, Dad, you got to get together with this guy. He has a lot of influence. So they sit down, and finally this Aiden Ross goes, hey, by the way, I have a gift for you. Takes him out front. But I believe because Trump's been a giver most of his life, he's always opening opportunities for people. I believe it's probably why Trump become president.
Well, good businessmen are givers.
Yes.
I read a thing online where it's actually kind of crazy. I'm trying to remember where I read it online, but it was saying that like most businessmen give away 10% of their income.
Where do you think they got that?
It's kind of interesting, right?
It is.
Like, I don't think it's just by coincidence. And I'm not saying they look in the Bible and say, well, 10% is tithe, so that's what I'm going to do as a businessman. But it's kind of odd that 10% of their income is given away in charitable donations. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think when it comes to like Charity and her family, financial gifts definitely have a monetary value. But the time and the skills and the things that they give to this property on the church and school side are valueless. And I mean that in the most, did I say that? Priceless.
Yeah.
Not valueless.
No,
very valuable, but priceless.
Priceless. Yeah.
Yeah. You couldn't put a price on it.
No. And I think that's, once again, giving can come across in many different ways. In fact, 1 Corinthians 13:4-8, I looked it up in the King James Version, which used to be what we would consider the original version, but it was just that King James put his own spin on it. But we usually know the verse as the love chapter. Mm-hmm. But in King James, the word is actually charity. Now, listen to this. Now, some of these words are King James, so they sound a little weird. But
welcome to an episode of Lord of the Rings.
Yes, Lord of the Rings. Yes, this is King's English, and I'm not even sure what that is. But charity suffereth long and is kind. Charity envieth not. Charity, it says, vaunteth itself not. It means not to be puffed up. It does not believe itself. It does not behave itself unseemly, seeks not its own, is not easily provoked, and thinks no evil. I'm making the shorter words now. It rejoices not in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Mm. But in King James, the word is charity instead of love. But what it made me realize is if you operate in love, the love that God gives us, that agape love, then you will be these things. You'll suffer long. And you know what suffering is. It means that if you're dealing with someone maybe that's perhaps mean to you, can you have patience and perseverance to still see that through?
Yeah.
So, and you don't envy. We see other people that has more than us.
Oh, that's probably one of my worst things, to be honest. Like, that's one thing I love about this church is that we don't sit here and try to pretend like we're perfect. We struggle with things. We deal with things. And sometimes I have the hardest time looking at people who are selfish and don't give tithes and offerings, don't give their time to church, aren't Christians, who are really rotten people, people who are drinking, doing drugs, cheating on their spouses, and they're driving around in brand new Ford F-250s and, they're drinking and driving and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, I try so hard to live according to God's will, and be a giver. And, it's hard. Like, I can't afford a brand new
Does that
truck.
get frustrating for you?
Yeah, that's probably one of the bigger things that I deal with. That's probably one of my bigger things. And I don't sit there and like the Wicked Witch of the West turned green with envy. But sometimes I have those thoughts where I'm like, man, what? Like, come on. I try so hard,
Or I think it's like we talked about last time. You see an NFL quarterback making $55 million a year, or you see LeBron James making $50 million a year, and good for them. But then at this church, it only would take $1.1 million to pay this church off.
Yeah,
that's peanuts.
No mortgage, no nothing. Yeah.
And what do we usually say? God owns it all, and He can provide it all, and I believe all that.
Right. In context, that's 10% of the salary.
Yeah.
If we were making $55,000, what is $1,000 to you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's not. We spend $1,000 in fast food every year.
Yes. But I think that's the whole thing is if you can keep your eyes focused on the Lord and not be distracted and go, but why did they have? And why does this person doesn't even serve you? But I think if we realize that God rewards you being charitable.
Yeah.
He rewards you like Cornelius when you give gifts and stuff. Your prayers and gifts to the poor have been received by God as an offering. Mm-hmm. God sees that. And I think the other thing I was looking up too, I thought was kind of interesting, is Charity works for Dunkin' Donuts.
Yep.
I think she manages 9 of them.
I think something like that.
Something like that?
Yeah.
So I was curious about Dunkin'. Do they do charitable donations through the year? Are they known for that? And it says Dunkin' supports a targeted group of nonprofit organizations within 3 focus areas: hunger, relief, safety, and children's health. And it says, I guess this is their organization making this statement, we believe we can make the greatest impact in our communities by focusing our resources on these organizations. And I was like, it's kind of cool. Hunger relief, safety, and children's health.
Yeah.
So I think even a company they're known for selling donuts. That's what they do.
Yeah.
But they probably are also known for being very charitable. Mm-hmm. And I think when you do that, once again, you can never outgive God. Plus, I think, it's like when you made the image for Rex Crane coming, what happened with Dunkin' Donuts?
Yeah, Charity said that the sales spiked and rather that physically has to deal with us or just spiritually deals with us. It's pretty awesome.
They were willing to help us, and all of a sudden God's like, you know what?
Let me reward that story.
Let me reward that. Plus, what do you think that says to the owners of the company or someone else that you can't explain that?
Right.
But once again, I think it does release something spiritually. When you're a giving person, people are drawn to you, number one. Anybody you find that's a giver, why did people love Mother Teresa?
Right.
Because she gave of her time. I actually heard that Mother Teresa died with a lot of money.
Wow. Interesting. I wonder where that money was. That just like charitable donation?
I don't know.
I mean,
maybe.
Think about that. Anytime somebody has done something really, really nice for you, what do you always think of? Like, man, I want to do something back. Usually your first thought is get them a gift card or something, So maybe.
Do you think maybe? Maybe that was Mother Teresa did so much for people that people just started sending her money.
Yeah.
She probably didn't know what to do.
I wouldn't doubt it.
That's pretty crazy.
My Nana and Papa, they have a timeshare in Oceanside. My mom has one. My Nana and Papa have one, and then my Uncle Keith has one. And it's a whole week right there on Oceanside beach, beachfront apartments, and it's all during the same week. So they try to get as many of us to cram together within the 3 apartments as possible. So it's like a big family vacation, and I know it's not easy for everyone. And the last time, it wasn't this year, but it was the year before, I had just gotten a little bit of a check. So I had like $200 in my pocket, and I was like, okay, I'm going to give this to my Nana and Papa, who are actually well off. Like they made very wise financial choices. They have 401k. Like
good for them.
They paid off their house in Moreno Valley. I call it Hawaii in Moreno Valley because it's like all tropical in their backyard, and they have a pool. Like they do well, I had like $200 in my pocket. And I was like, okay, I'm going to give this to my Nana to help out with, just the price of the timeshare for the week, So I go to give it to her, and she like straight smacked my hand, and she was almost offended, She was almost like, how dare you,
really
try to give me money and stop me from blessing you with like this week. And then she turned around and gave me $200 in spite of the fact that I tried to give her money to say thank you. And now I know that that's my Nana. And of course, like I'm her favorite grandson. So that's why she did that. But it really meant something and it showed me something because Teresa and I didn't have a lot of extra spending money that week to, we had all of our needs met. Yeah. But it's like, okay, we're not going to go out and go buy
splurge
clothes
or anything,
or go rent a boogie board or anything like that. We're just going to enjoy the beach and eat our sandwiches and stuff like that. But we had that money that I was already planning on giving to my Nana. And then so I was planning on being down 200, and I ended up plus 400 because of just my willingness to give. I didn't even have to give.
Isn't that
just
crazy?
The willingness to let go of it. Almost like Abraham, right? Being willing to let go of his son.
Yes. Isaac. Yeah.
He was going to
sacrifice.
Abraham being willing to let go of Isaac, even though he didn't. God stopped him and said, hold on. I appreciate that you were willing to go there, but I'm not going to make you.
Well, it reminds me, I think the guy's name's Steven Shapiro that's on TikTok, and he'll go up to people and he'll just randomly go up and go, hey, man, you have $5 I can have? And what he'll do is if they give him the $5, he'll give them like 100.
Wow.
Or 500. And they'll be completely
blown away.
Yeah. All he wanted to see, and like one person came up to me, he's like, do you have a quarter I can have? And the lady was kind of like, you just want a quarter? And he goes, yeah. And I think he gave her $500.
Yeah.
And it just blew his, because he wanted to see were
Are
they
you
willing
to give?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he does it all the time. And it's kind of cool just to see, because I think once again, when you're willing to give, like Abraham, when he was willing to give Isaac, that's actually was a foreshadow of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ.
Right.
But where we're supposed to be crucified. So Abraham was willing to give, but God has a ram stuck in the thicket who is supposed to be the sacrifice on our behalf, Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. So we don't have to pay the price. He already paid the price. And you're going, a lot of people believe that Isaac was probably in his late teen years.
Mm.
It's not like you're taking 2-year-old up and laying it. You're saying, hey, can you lay up on that altar right there? He's carrying the wood of the altar he's going to be laid on.
Has to know what's going on because it's tradition.
And if you read the Bible, it says that Abraham raised the knife, getting ready to sacrifice him. And then the angel stopped him.
You know, I probably think of like a funny sketch of like Isaac being like, all right, Dad, so where's the sacrifice?
No, it's what a lot of people say.
You know what I mean? Like, what are we coming up here for?
Can
like,
you imagine if God asked you to do that with Kenai?
No. I don't know.
It's crazy, man.
Listen, super Christian. I made this comment one time about in men's church or in men's morning, and a lot of people kind of like bashed me for it. And I was like, I just said like, you don't know how gung-ho you are for God and Jesus until you're put in a situation like that. You don't know how you're going to respond in that. And I had said, you know, if my wife and daughter, because I only had Clea at that time, are being raped in front of me, and people are saying, denounce Jesus Christ or this will continue until they die, I can't sit here in this room and tell you that I'm fully confident knowing that I would just let that happen. I don't know how I'm going to react. And there's some people in the men's conference, you know, they're super Christians, and they're like, no, I'm never denouncing Christ. And I'm like, your wife and your daughter are being raped in front of you until they die, and it's not even something that you can, like, I just don't know. I'm not saying I would denounce Christ. I just don't know.
Well, I don't think anybody knows.
Yeah.
What if someone put a gun to your head? Oh, no. Put a gun to your daughter's head and said, you denounce Christ or I'll shoot her right now.
You don't know how you're going to act unless you're in that situation.
No.
You know, those super Christians will tell you, I'll never. I'm like, get out of here.
I would hope that I wouldn't.
Same.
But to be honest with you, I'm not sure what I would do.
Yeah, you don't know.
Yeah. And I think it's got to be a thing where it's almost has to be a supernatural strength or something. You know, you think about when you were just talking about it, reminded me of when Stephen was stoned in the New Testament. And Stephen was preaching. And it even says they were so upset they were covering their ears. They didn't want to hear the truth. And then they start stoning him. I mean, I'm sure these weren't pebbles. These are probably like big boulders.
Yeah.
It's the only time that I'm aware of in the Bible where it says Jesus Christ stood up. It says in the Bible that Jesus, after the resurrection, sat at the right hand of the Father. In that story, he stood up. And it says that Stephen looked up to him and his face shone like an angel that Stephen's did. Who knows what feeling came over Stephen that he's getting hit with
bricks, yeah.
And looking up like, okay, Jesus, I'm all good.
He's a little CTE, a little concussed.
But you wonder, like, was it almost like bouncing off of him? Like, I mean, I know it's killing him, but at the same time, is it almost
wasn't feeling it?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
You just don't know.
I don't know. And it's such a weird thing. But it reminded me, too, there's a movie when you said, I don't know what I would do, but there's a movie called Silence. Have you seen it?
No.
It's got Andrew Garfield in it, who played Spider-Man, I think, once or twice. And what it is, it's a true story. It's about 2 Portuguese missionaries back in the 17th centuries. And they are Christian, and they're going to another country to find a missionary that was one of their most famous missionaries, played by Liam Neeson. And they said they had heard stories that he denounced his Christianity, I think in the country of Japan or something like that. And they just couldn't believe it. They were like, there's no way.
Yeah, not him, right?
Yeah. But he did. Then they're both put in scenarios where they have the opportunities to denounce Christ, and one does and the other one doesn't.
Well, you have to be careful. If you are going to sit there and say, man, I can't believe that person is drinking, and then you have to be careful because whatever your thing, that temptation thing is probably going to come up on you and see if you are going to overcome your thing. You have to be careful with that. When you talk about judging and the Bible says, don't judge the splinter in my eye when you have a log in yours or whatever like that. Like, it's not saying you can't judge, but make sure you're ready for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you're going to cast judgment or thoughts about people.
Well, we would find out real quickly where our Christianity is if we went to North Korea to live.
Right.
Or
Die.
China.
Yeah, you're not going there to live.
No.
It's like,
so one of the interesting parts in the movie, there's a scene in the middle of the movie where there's Christians that won't denounce Christ. And you know how they kill them?
mm-mm.
They put them on the shore of the ocean. And you know how the tide comes in?
Yeah.
And they put them on crosses. And they wait for the tide to come in to eventually, what does it do? It drowns them.
That's sad. Just,
knowing
you get a little bit of relief in between sets, but eventually the tide comes up and over.
And it overtakes you.
Yeah.
And I think in the case of the ones that are depicted in the movie, they were just singing to the Lord.
Oh, gosh. I mean, I'd be holding my breath.
Oh, my God. It's an insane... The whole movie is really... Like, when I was watching it, I kept going, man, what would I do?
Yeah.
Like, what would I do? I don't know.
But you don't know. It's just one of those things you don't know until you're...
But I think, once again, when you've been someone that's really operated in what is Christ-like, which is giving, charitable, Jesus was all about... It says in Philippians, I think it's Philippians 2:7, it says, he made himself of no reputation, but lowly as a servant.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do that, I think what it does is it releases something in you and spiritually that, we know a lot of times people that have served Christ overseas have been beheaded.
Yeah.
Their families have been sacrificed, and you go, how? But I think there's just something supernaturally that comes upon you that when that moment happens, God gives you the strength.
Yeah.
Supernaturally, probably.
It's almost I fear no man because you have no power over me unless the power that is given to you by God the Father. You can apply that to your life. So
the Pontius Pilate thing.
Yeah. If they come at you and that way you can, I guess you can just say that. Oh, man, I would hope I would miss my kids dearly, and I hope they would know their dad died a hero.
Yeah, well, don't you think, too, as you were just talking and saying that, if you only see life on this side of eternity, then you'll make decisions that could be short-sighted.
Yeah.
But you'll spend, say, 80 years, 90 years on this side of eternity, maybe 100, with your wife, kids, and grandkids. Some of that time's a little bit less, depending on what age they are when they came into your life.
Yeah.
Because you was how old when Kalea was born?
19.
Yeah. So let's say you live to be 100. She's in your life for 81 years. Honey Ray was just born.
Mm-hmm.
If you live to be 100, she'd be in your life for 68 years. Mm-hmm. So, but eternity is forever. So let's say Honey Ray gets 68 more years with you. But compared to eternity that she'll spend with you,
it's minute.
It's minute.
Yeah.
But we only know this side. So I think a lot of times if you're put in a situation where you're like, man, should I denounce my faith? And anymore, we know all it took a couple of years ago is for someone to say that there's a disease out there called COVID, and how many Christians quickly bowed a knee to COVID.
Or the stock market is going down.
Stock market's going down. And the thing is I remember with COVID, because I had my own feelings on COVID. To me, it was the flu. But the flu kills people. A lot of bacterial diseases kill people.
Yeah.
So
and pneumonia.
Pneumonia and all that. Yeah. So people die. People died before COVID. People died during COVID, and people are still dying. In fact, I just seen a statistic recently that the overall death rate has dropped 6%. Strangely enough.
Winning.
Yeah. Yeah.
There we go.
So what I noticed, though, I remember talking to someone, and I said, isn't it weird how we put one C over the top of another C when we operate in fear? So COVID all of a sudden become over Christ.
Yeah.
But we were the same Christians before COVID. I say we.
Yeah.
The body is like, Lord, I'll do anything for you. I'll rebuke cancer in your name. And I'll do anything, Lord. I'd give my life for you. And then as soon as COVID come, we're hiding in
shut this door. Yeah.
Shut that church down.
Need to wear masks.
Yeah. And I think what it did is that the world looked at us and went, oh, do you know during the, when you know history, so maybe you'll know this better than me. When was the Black Plague and all that?
I think the 1500s.
Yeah. You know who helped during the Black Plagues and most of the plagues? The Christians.
Oh, that makes sense.
The Christians went in unafraid to die, and some of them did die because they got the disease. But the Christians were the ones that went in to took care of people because they're like, we have Christ.
And somebody needs to.
And somebody has to do it.
Yeah.
And I think that's the whole thing, once again, is how valuable is your life? What is the legacy you want to leave behind? And for me, I'd rather be known as someone that was a giver, whether it's of time, money, or whatever, or even of my own comfort to benefit someone else. Mm-hmm. And someone like Charity reminds me of that and her family.
That's kind of been my reoccurring theme, I think, over the past 3 sermons, the in and out, or in or out, surface pressure, and then the sermon I'll be preaching on the 28th. And it's kind of just the reoccurring theme has been, when I die, I want to be significant in God's eyes. I don't just want God to know who I am. I want him to know me. You know, I don't want him, of course he knows Kyle, and I don't want him to just be like, hey, Kyle, come in. I want to be significant. And when you look at the people who I consider significant, there was trials, there was tribulations, there was pressure, there was, you know, times where they were in, times where they were out, times where they were doing amazing things, and there's a lot of things that happened in their life. But I know when they got up there, I know when Peter got up there, Jesus was like, Peter, like, you know what I mean? There was a moment, you know.
Well done, good and faithful servant.
Right. But you know, there's a lot of people who go up there that are just like, oh yeah, your name's in the book, get in here. There has to be. And I could care less about crowns. I could care less about accolades. I could care less about mansions and all the fun things that we like to pretend is or isn't up there. And that's not for me to debate because I really don't care.
Yeah.
I just really want to be significant. I really want to know that I whatever God's will and purpose was for my life, I acted accordingly to what he desired for me. I don't want to be a friend of God, but not on his page. You know what I mean? Because I don't want to say like an enemy of God, but I don't want to be his friend, but not on his page.
Yeah.
Like I want to be reading the same book. I want to be there in my life.
So I ask you a question. What is one thing about your mom that you would say has made the greatest impact on you?
No matter where we were in our life, we were in church, no matter where. And so
your mom instilled that.
Yeah. And so, you know, I talk mostly about the good things in my life with my dad and stuff like that. But like my birth father, you know, when she was going through divorce and he was abusive and she was drugged and just different things like that, she had all the reason not to be in church. The church that she grew up in had shunned her because she got pregnant at 16. You know, I think she was 16. Yeah, I think she was 16 or maybe she was 18. But however old she was, they shunned her because it was out of wedlock. And then she got married and my birth father was a drinker. And she had all the reason in the world to give up on God. She had a hard young adult life. And she just was like, no matter what we're going through, car, no car, house, no house, dad in the picture, dad not in the picture, we're going to be in church. And I would say that is probably the best quality, the biggest thing that she's ever passed down to me.
So like perseverance.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I thought about when we were talking about eternity, and you've probably read these verses, but in Revelation 4:8, it talks about these living beings. Some people believe like either cherubim or angels singing to the Lord. So it says this: each of these living beings had 6 wings, and their wings were covered all over with eyes inside and out, which is bizarre. Day after day and night after night, they kept on saying, holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, the one who always was, who is, and who is still to come. So you think about, how would it be possible that they would do this nonstop?
Yeah.
And I heard a sermon one time, the guy described it brilliantly. He said, because every time they said, holy, 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 they were going around the throne of God, and they've seen a different facet of God they've never seen before. And then they went, holy, 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 holy. So you were just saying, if there's anything that I'd want to be known for, is that God knew me and that I knew him. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is when you really know God, you're so in awe of his holiness that you go, you want me to give 10% of my money? I'm good with that.
Yeah. If
it come to the point where I had to give my life, I'm good with that because you're holy, holy, holy.
I mean, listen, you guys, or you specifically, I don't know who's listening to this, know that the obedience that I had to have in the past 3 weeks to still get up and preach that sermon despite of everything I was going through was showing God obedience and that I wanted to be known and I want to know him. Fast forward to today, not knowing what was going to happen in the staff meeting, I woke up at 2:30 and I heard God say, write your next sermon. And I heard it clear. Like it wasn't like, Kyle, write your next, but it was like, oh, okay. Like, that's what you want me to do. Like, I heard the Holy Spirit tell me, write your next sermon. And I was like, right now it's 2:30 in the morning. I'm kind of tired. I want to go to sleep, And it was like, no, write your next sermon. So from 2:30 to 6 o'clock in the morning, I was writing my next sermon. No idea when I was going to be scheduled to preach. No idea if I was going to be scheduled. Nothing like that. Teresa wakes up at 6 o'clock and is like, what are you doing? I was like, working on my sermon. She's like, oh, okay, that makes sense, and goes back to sleep. Any other answer other than working on a sermon, she probably would have been like, get your butt to bed, boy. Yeah. You know what I mean? If it was like playing video games or watching TV. Fast forward into staff meeting, and what happens? Hey, August 28th, we want a speaker who, does anybody want it? And you are like, well, let's give it to Kyle. You know what I mean? Because I already had, had something locked and loaded,
But even when we were in the staff meeting, I had completely forgot that you already told me you had a sermon prepared.
Yeah.
And but I think that's the thing. You were obedient. You didn't have a date, but obedience would already have something prepared, even if it was 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Because you're listening to what God's telling you to do. So you talked about obedience. In 1 Samuel 15:22, Samuel, who was the prophet who went to anoint the next king. And remember when all the brothers of David come out? They were impressive. Yeah. In fact, Samuel himself thought. But as he went along, God kept saying, no, no, no. I think there were 7 or 8 brothers. But he goes, but Samuel replied, what is more pleasing to the Lord? He goes, what is more pleasing to the Lord? Your burnt offerings and sacrifices, or your obedience to his voice? You getting woken up this morning, and then it says, listen, obedience is better than sacrifice, and submission is better than offering the fat of rams. So he's saying what they would fall into the pattern back then of going, well, I've made sacrifices to you. And he's like, I don't care about your sacrifices. I care about your obedience. What do we see a lot in Christianity now? You know what? If I want to fornicate,
a lot of compromise.
Yeah. And people go, but I'm sacrificing. I'm singing on the worship team. I'm helping in kids' church. And God's like, yeah, but are you tithing?
Yeah.
Are you fornicating? Are you lying? So you think because you sacrifice to do one thing for me, but you're not obedient to my word, God doesn't bless that.
Yeah.
And I think that, once again, a person that's willing to give of their time and their money or any aspect of their life, it makes you more open, because Jesus said just when he was getting ready to ascend to heaven, he tells his disciples, because they were very concerned. And he goes, don't worry about it. I'm going to send the Comforter to be with you. The Holy Spirit will be with you. He'll be in you. So we don't have to worry about if we can know truth. Truth resides in us.
Right.
So the Holy Spirit will guide you into truth. The question is are we obedient and listen?
My favorite Pastor Steve quote of the year so far, and I've got a few of them on my Facebook because I want them to pop up, is you have to side with truth no matter which side it's on. And so sometimes truth ain't on your side. Sometimes truth is not what you wanted to hear. Sometimes truth is not what you hoped for. But as a God-fearing, God-loving believer, you still have to side on that truth.
That's good.
And there's blessings that follow that.
Well, if once again I came to you as someone, we worked together, and you've seen that I consistently lied, and then I go up and do an offering, and I almost do the opposite in the offering, what would you think about me?
I would think you're a very questionable individual, and I wouldn't trust you with any information.
Even if I had the position to be on the platform, but misused that position because I was acting a totally different way in another time in my life, whether it's privately or not on a platform. And I think that's the whole thing, is God cares about obedience. A lot of time, we were talking about this in the staff meeting. You were saying a thing about the grace and law. What did you say about it?
Because that's my next sermon is, it's called Somewhere in Between. And it's just learning how to live a grace-led life while respecting the law. Because you can't, in my opinion, and when I was doing the study, there's a lot of grace teachers who don't want to acknowledge law at all. And it's like, law is not there to tell you everything you can't do. Law is there to show you how God wants you to live. And it's not and I'm trying not to throw away so much of my sermon, but it's not a salvation issue, because we know that salvation is asking Jesus Christ into your heart and stuff. But it's a quality of life issue, you know.
That's good. Well, Pastor Jurgen always says this. He goes, we don't break the law. We break ourselves against the law.
Yeah.
So if you're not supposed to lie, what happens when you lie?
It gets hard. You have,
So you're breaking yourself against it. When you hit truth, it breaks you. So the thing is grace comes in and goes, you can't live up to the standard, but I'm going to give you a Holy Spirit that does.
Right. My quote about grace in my sermon, it's a big teaching point, is that grace is not to affirm your sin. Grace is to affirm who you are despite of your sin.
Ooh, that's good.
Because it's not there to be like, oh, I can drink because of grace. It's
but how many people do we know like
so
that?
many. So many.
Yeah.
But it's the opposite of that. It's, hey, I saw what happened, but you're still loved. Come on, we can fix that.
You know what it reminds me of when you say it? So if you come up to a red light, you could run the red light and possibly the grace of God would protect you and you don't get hit.
Mm-hmm.
But if you break the law, there's a possibility
you could catch a ticket.
Or you do get hit.
Yeah.
So then, could the grace of God possibly protect you in that? Yes. But at the same time, you could get hit. And I'll tell you a quick story that happened yesterday while I was talking to you.
Uh-oh.
No, this is serious. I completely forgot about it until we were just talking. So I was at, where Chili's is?
Yeah.
So I was coming across, where Burlington is and all that. So I'm on that little side street, come up to Florida. There's 5 cars in line. I'm the 5th car. Me and you were talking on the phone. I can't remember what we were talking about. This was just yesterday afternoon. Oh, about the podcast. And I was like, man, you guys have like 2,300 views.
Oh, about the one with Eddie George.
Yeah. So the light turns green. We start going through it. I completely forget where I'm at, but don't realize that. So I'm just following the cars, not realizing as I get into it, the green turns yellow and then red. I'm right in the middle, but I don't know this. So I'm just enjoying my conversation with you, and people are honking their horns at me like, hey, and I'm just like looking at people like, hey, man, what's up? And then I look up and I was like, oh my God, it's a red light. Fortunately, no one ran into me or anything, but you know what? If they had, that was my fault.
Yeah.
So God's grace protected me to a point, but my ignorance could have made it really bad for not only me, but for other people I put in danger.
Right.
And I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe. I couldn't believe yesterday I did it. And I got through the intersection. I was like, man, I hope there was no cameras. I hope nobody. And no one got hurt, but they could have.
Yeah.
So.
Vehicles are dangerous. The one thing I wanted to say, because we've been talking about Charity, is she's such a hard worker. And so I thought of this scripture, came to my mind when we were talking about doing this for her. Colossians 3:23-24. It says, whatever you do, work at it with all your heart, as working for the Lord and not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as a reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving. And it's so, a lot of people, they look at their jobs and they want to do ministry. And I'm not saying Charity's like this, but they want to do ministry. They want to be pastors. They want to work for the church. And they belittle where they're at the moment. The Bible doesn't say if you work at the church as if you work for it. It says wherever you're at, do it with all you have unto the Lord, and you will receive an inheritance. And I believe, my personal opinion, that she's somebody that has really applied Colossians 3:23-24 to her life, because it's basic. Everything she has the joy of the Lord. Anytime I've come across her, she's a hard worker. You know what I mean?
And her husband's like that. Brandon's like that. Yeah,
same thing. And so it's not surprising to me to see how blessed of a family they are, based off of just their work ethic and their attitude when it comes to where they're at in life, And I think if you could take that anywhere, rather she's at Dunkin's in 6 months, or she's doing something else, or he's still working for the security at the casino, or he's doing something else, they will always be successful. They will always be the top of the food chain at their jobs, because everything that they're doing is to the Lord, and he's the one that's guiding their paycheck. He's the one that's guiding their blessings and their promotions. It's not The owners might think they are, the managers might think they are, but they're not in control of any of that. God is.
Well, when in Devon, there's sons like that when he does sound. He's very chill. He does a great job. But once again, and I know we're probably getting ready to wrap up, but the story when Joseph was thrown into the pit, the Ishmaelites pick him up. They take him to the land of Egypt. We know he works in Potiphar's house, and then Potiphar's wife accuses him of trying to rape her, which was a lie. Mm-hmm. So then he's put in prison. But shortly into prison, Joseph had so much favor with the prison guards and all that kind of stuff, they put him over it.
Yeah.
So here's a prisoner over the very thing that's supposed to be make him be held captive. Eventually, Joseph becomes second in the land in Egypt, a Jewish person in Egypt.
Yeah, in charge.
In charge. So then when the famine comes, Joseph had that dream years before that his brothers would bow to him. What happens? They come back, they don't recognize, and eventually he recognizes them, and they have to come to Egypt to get food. Mm-hmm. Joseph was the one that had it stored. And I think, once again, if you operate in a charitable spirit, you're always feeding people, spiritually feeding them, physically feeding them, because you can't give out enough.
Right.
So.
I love it. For charity.
For charity. What is it? 1 Corinthians?
Colossians.
Oh, yours is Colossians, yeah.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yours is 1 Corinthians in the King James.
Yeah.
The hithereth there.
The hithereth there, but...
Colossians 3:23 and 24.
Say it again.
Whatever you do, work at it with all your heart as working for the Lord, not for human masters, since you know that you will receive an inheritance from the Lord as your reward. It is the Lord Christ you are serving.
That's good.
So, I mean, take that to the bank wherever you're at in your life, man. Like, whatever God has you doing right now, if you're working at McDonald's, if you're washing cars, if you're working at a church office or at a school, just know that when you're there, you're not working to serve human masters, owners, and bosses, but you're doing it unto Christ. You will find success in your life if you follow that and you're obedient.
It's kind of like a heavenly portfolio.
Ooh, that's good.
Suzanne told me that one time.
So
I had to steal that. That's for my wife. I love my wife.
That's what I'm saying, bro. Like,
yeah, give it up for Suzanne Ryan.
When I get up to heaven, I want that. Like, I want God to pull out that notebook and just be like, all right, let's talk about some things. And like I said, I want him to know me. I know he knows me, but I want him to know me.
Wouldn't it be cool, though? Like, he's looking through your ledger and he's like, man, Kyle,
like, dang, dude,
looking good.
Forget about that page. Throw that out. Well, thank you guys for joining us today. We appreciate it. We hope you guys enjoyed this podcast. If you want a podcast for yourself, then be more active, man. Talk to us about what we hear on here and what you like and what you don't like, and come let us know that you're listening. Any final words, Pastor Steve?
I say we need to get Lauren. How do you say Lauren's last name?
Chalinar?
Chalinar?
I don't know. It's not a Mexican name. It's a white name.
Yeah.
So.
But she just started on staff. We've got to get her in here to do a podcast. Maybe we can get Evan, who does our young adults ministry as well.
That would be good.
Yeah, because they both attend young adults, so it would be kind of good. She's on the worship team, but to get different perspectives. But definitely get Lauren in here. Maybe your wife as well.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah.
Don't forget, this Sunday we have Rex Crane. So if you guys, that's August 18th.
August the 18th.
Yeah, we have Rex Crane. We'll be giving away Dunkin' Donuts. Donated by charity.
Yeah.
And
strangely enough.
And we'll be selling breakfast burritos. So guys, besides the donuts and the breakfast burritos, Rex Crane's going to be serving up a spiritual meal that you do not want to miss. So
that boy is fire every time. 10 a.m. this Sunday, August the 18th, DP City Church, 27100 Girard Street in Hemet, California.
And if you miss it, it'll be online. So
yeah, there you go.
YouTube. All right. Thank you guys. We'll see you next time in the deep end.